Captain Jake Morrison was having his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. He put down his mug and walked to the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, already knowing this day was going to be different. His crew was pointing at the main screen, where something big and strange was floating in space. "What are we looking at?" Morrison asked his science officer, Lieutenant Pete Williams. "Unknown vessel, Captain. About 2 kilometers long, made of some kind of metal we don't recognize. It's not moving much, and we're picking up weird energy readings. I think their engine is broken." Morrison studied the alien ship. It looked like someone had taken a giant fish and covered it in silver plates. Strange lights blinked along its sides, but they were dim and flickering. Black smoke was coming out of what looked like engine ports. "Any weapons pointed at us?" Morrison asked. "No, sir. Actually, I don't see any weapons at all. This looks like a cargo ship, and it's definitely in trouble." Morrison made the decision that would change everything. 3 months earlier, Earth's governments had written a thick book of rules about what to do if humans ever met aliens. The book said to observe from a distance, report to headquarters, wait for instructions, and absolutely do not make direct contact without permission from at least 5 different committees. Morrison had read the book. He thought it was stupid. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies." His communications officer, Sergeant Amy Foster, looked nervous. "Sir, the protocols say we should—" "I know what the protocols say. Open the channel." Foster pressed the buttons. Morrison cleared his throat and spoke into his microphone. "Unknown. Vessel, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Liberty. You look like you're having engine trouble. Do you need assistance?" The bridge went quiet. Everyone stared at Morrison like he had just jumped off a cliff. They waited 30 seconds, then a minute. Then the speakers crackled with a voice that sounded nervous and surprised. "Earthship Liberty, this is Captain Veltar of the Merchant. Vessel Gentle Current. Did you just offer to help us?" Morrison smiled. "Yes, sir, we did. What's your problem?" There was another long pause. Then Veltar's voice came back, sounding confused. "Our hyperdrive cooling system has failed. We are stranded until we can repair it. But we do not understand. Are you not going to demand identification? Request our cargo manifest? Ask about our intentions in your space?" "Well," Morrison said, "you're broken down on the side of the road, so to speak. Everything else can wait until we get you running again. Mind if we come over and take a look?" The alien captain sounded even more confused. "You want to board our vessel? Without security escorts? Without formal diplomatic procedures?" Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was still staring at him like he had lost his mind. "Captain Veltar, I'm going to guess this is the first time humans and your people have met. We can do all the formal stuff later. Right now, you need help, and we can provide it. That's just good manners where I come from." 20 minutes later, Morrison and his chief engineer, Lisa Rodriguez, were floating in spacesuits toward the alien ship. Rodriguez was carrying a toolbox and muttering about how this was either the best first contact in history or the dumbest thing humans had ever done. The airlock on the Gentle Current opened, and Morrison got his first look at an alien. Captain Veltar was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His head was shaped like a triangle, and his eyes were huge and black. He wore a uniform that looked like it was made of liquid silver. "Welcome aboard," Veltar said in English. That was careful and precise. "I must tell you, this is not how first contact usually happens." "How does it usually happen?" Morrison asked as they walked through corridors that were too tall and too narrow for humans. "There are procedures, protocols, months of careful communication, background checks, cultural assessments, security reviews. The Galactic Council has very specific rules about how new species are to be introduced to galactic civilization. Rodriguez whistled. Galactic Council? How many species are out there? Currently, 47 member species and perhaps 300 known civilizations. Veltar answered, all of whom followed proper first contact procedures. They reached the engine room, and Rodriguez stopped talking. The hyperdrive was a beautiful piece of technology, all flowing curves and pulsing energy conduits. It was also clearly broken. Coolant was leaking everywhere, and several components were making unhappy grinding noises. How long have you been dealing with this? Rodriguez asked, already pulling tools from her kit. 18 hours. We have been drifting and sending distress signals, but the nearest galactic patrol vessel is 4 days away. Rodriguez was already elbow deep in alien machinery. This isn't too different from our experimental drives. Same basic principles, just more elegant. You've got a blown coolant pump and some kind of resonance cascade in your field generators. Give me 2 hours. Morrison watched his engineer work while he and Veltar talked. The alien captain explained how galactic civilization worked, with careful rules and slow, cautious contact between species. It sounded very organized and very boring. So nobody just helps out a stranger? Morrison asked. Help is available through proper channels. Forms must be filed, assistance requests must be approved, and all interactions must be supervised by trained diplomatic staff. Morrison shook his head. That sounds like a lot of paperwork to help somebody fix their car. 3 hours later, the Gentle Current's engines were not just fixed, but running better than they had in years. Rodriguez had replaced the broken parts with human equivalents and made what she called a few small improvements to the overall system. Your engineer increased our drive efficiency by 12%, Veltar told Morrison as they prepared to leave. How is this possible? Rodriguez shrugged. Different approaches to the same problems. Your people built for elegance, we built for reliability. Combine them, and you get something better than either. Morrison handed Veltar a small device, personal communicator. If you folks ever need help again, just call. We'll be around. Veltar stared at the device like it might explode. You are giving me a direct communication link to your ship? Sure, neighbors should be able to call each other. Morrison also gave Veltar a metal container. Coffee beans from Earth. Figured you might like to try something new. The alien captain was holding the gifts like they were sacred artifacts. Captain Morrison, what you have done today violates approximately 47 different first contact protocols and at least 12 interstellar treaties. Morrison grinned. Did we help you out? Yes, but are you going to be able to get home safely? Yes, but the regulations. Then I'd say we did good work today. Back on the Liberty, Morrison's crew was quiet as they watched the alien ship jump to hyperspace with engines that were now running perfectly. Captain, Lieutenant Williams finally said, we're going to be in so much trouble when we report this. Morrison sat down in his command chair and picked up his coffee mug. It was still warm. Williams, we just met our first aliens, helped them fix their ship, made some new friends, and proved that humans can get along with anybody. If the folks back home want to punish us for that, they can get in line behind the Galactic Council. 2 days later, Emergency Session 847 Alpha of the Galactic Council convened to discuss what their analysts were calling the human problem. The meeting would last for 6 hours and end with no clear resolution, except that everyone agreed humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. Captain Veltar's report was being studied by intelligence services across the galaxy. The humans had approached with weapons ready but not hostile, had offered help without asking for anything in return, and had treated first contact like a casual meeting between neighbors. Most disturbing of all, they had been effective, friendly, and completely unconcerned with proper procedures. This suggested they might treat all of galactic civilization the same way, The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. Ambassador Patricia Wells packed her grandmother's cookie recipe and 3 pounds of coffee beans for what would become the most unusual diplomatic meeting in galactic history. She had been a trade negotiator for 15 years, specializing in difficult international agreements. Her superiors thought this experience would help her deal with aliens. They were wrong about almost everything. Wells arrived at Galactic Council Station, Harmony aboard the diplomatic transport UES Boston. The station was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth, with sections built by dozens of different species. Some parts looked like crystal gardens, others like metal caves, and a few sections seemed to be made of living light. Her escort was a floating robot that spoke in musical tones and kept apologizing for the primitive accommodations they had prepared for the human delegation. The quarters were actually quite nice, but the bed was designed for someone with tentacles instead of legs. The first thing Wells learned was that galactic diplomacy moved very slowly. Her appointment with the council was scheduled for 3 weeks. After her arrival, the time was supposed to be used for cultural orientation and protocol training. Wells lasted exactly 4 days before she decided to skip the training and request an immediate meeting. Ambassador Wells, said her protocol advisor, a nervous creature that looked like a walking flower, this is highly irregular. New species. Require extensive preparation before addressing the council. There are forms to complete, cultural assessments to review, and proper ceremonial dress to obtain. Wells looked at her jeans and polo shirt. What's wrong with what I'm wearing? Nothing is wrong, precisely. But formal council sessions require traditional diplomatic attire that represents your species' highest cultural achievements. Wells thought about this. Okay, I'll wear my grandmother's church dress. She always said it made her feel dignified. The protocol advisor made a sound like wind chimes falling downstairs. That is not exactly what we meant. 2 days later, Wells stood outside the council chamber wearing her grandmother's blue dress, carrying a briefcase full of homemade cookies, and feeling like she was about to give a presentation at the local town hall. The council chamber was intimidating, with seats arranged in rising circles around a central speaking area. Representatives from 47 different species watched her with expressions that ranged from curious to terrified. Wells walked to the center podium, sat down, her briefcase, and looked around at the assembled aliens. Some had tentacles, others had too many eyes, and a few seemed to be made of living gas. She had prepared a formal speech about humanity's desire for peaceful relations and mutual cooperation. Instead, she opened her briefcase and started handing out cookies. "Hi, everyone," she said with a smile. "I'm Patricia Wells from Earth, and I brought snacks." The silence that followed was so complete that Wells could hear the station's air recycling systems. A crystal-like being in the front row actually started glowing brighter, which her briefing materials had said meant either excitement or panic. "I know you folks have been doing this a lot longer than we have," Wells continued, offering a cookie to a delegate who looked like a 6-foot-tall lizard. "But we thought we'd skip the formal dance and get straight to the good stuff. What do you need, and how can we help?" Council Speaker Taishra, a floating energy being from the ethereal dominion, made a sound like static electricity. The translation came through Wells' earpiece as something equivalent to choking in surprise. Wells proceeded to give her presentation, which she had titled, "Humans, Your New Galactic Neighbors." She used a simple laptop computer to show pictures of Earth, human cities, and what she called some of the things we're good at. "We've got about 8 billion people back home who are pretty excited about meeting you all," Wells explained while showing photos of New York City and rural Kansas farms. "We've already got volunteer programs starting up for cultural exchange. Our universities are putting together xenobiology departments, and Detroit is retooling 3 factories to build interstellar cargo haulers. The crystalline assembly's delegate made a cracking sound that the translator interpreted as extreme surprise. We figure we can have regular trade routes established within 18 months. Assuming you folks are interested, Wells continued. Earth produces a lot of things you might find useful. Food, manufactured goods, entertainment, technology, and we're always happy to learn new ways of doing things. She clicked to the next slide, which showed a graph of Earth's industrial output. The numbers were staggering by galactic standards, representing the production capacity of a world that had spent centuries building factories and infrastructure. This is just what we make for ourselves, Wells explained. If there's demand for Earth products, we can scale up pretty easily. Americans especially like big projects. The military observer from the Stellar Republic, General Krexta, was taking notes so fast that his stylus was smoking. Wells moved on to what she called some examples of human problem-solving. She showed pictures of the Panama Canal, the International Space Station, and the Internet. We're pretty good at figuring things out as we go, she said. If something needs doing, we usually find a way to do it. Sometimes we mess up, but we learn fast and we don't give up easily. The presentation continued with examples of human art, music, sports, and what Wells called our general approach to life. She showed pictures of Olympic athletes, jazz musicians, and a Little League baseball game. We like to compete, but we also like to cooperate. Most problems are easier to solve when everyone works together, she explained. The final section of her presentation was titled, What We Hope to Accomplish. Wells clicked through slides showing human plans for space exploration, cultural exchange programs, and joint scientific research projects. We don't want to take over anything or boss anyone around, she said. We just want to be good neighbors. Help out when we can, learn new things, and maybe make some friends along the way. She closed her laptop and looked around the chamber. Any questions? The silence stretched for almost a full minute. Then Speaker Taishura managed to form words. Ambassador Wells, what you have presented is highly unusual. New species typically request provisional membership status and spend decades proving their worthiness for galactic society. Wells nodded. That sounds like a lot of paperwork. We were thinking maybe we could just start with the neighbor thing and see how it goes. You speak as if your acceptance into galactic civilization is a foregone conclusion. Well, Wells said, we're already here. We've already met some of you, and everyone seems pretty reasonable. I figured we could work out the details as we go along. The council session lasted for 6 hours. Wells answered questions about human culture, technology, military capability, and intentions. She was honest about everything, including humanity's tendency to fight when threatened, and their history of solving problems through direct action. Humans do not appear to understand the concept of gradual integration, observed the representative from the Hive Collective. They plan for full participation in galactic society before receiving approval for such participation. Wells shrugged. Back home, we call that being optimistic. The session ended with Wells distributing business cards for Earth's major governments and corporations, scheduling follow-up meetings with individual council members, and inviting everyone to what she called a proper Earth-style barbecue. Once the diplomatic formalities were sorted out, as she packed up her briefcase and the empty cookie plate, Wells overheard several delegates discussing something called the human situation in worried tones. Later that evening, the council convened an emergency session to address what Speaker Taishra termed an unprecedented diplomatic challenge. The debate raged for hours. Some members were charmed by humanity's directness. The Zephyrian delegate, still grateful for Captain Morrison's help with their broken ship, spoke in favor of immediate integration. Others were deeply concerned. The Ethereal Dominion's representative worried about the precedent humanities. Casual approach would set for future species seeking counsel. Membership. The military observers were most disturbed by humanity's obvious capabilities combined with their apparent assumption that they would be welcomed as equals rather than evaluated as potential threats. General Krex, they provided the analysis that would shape the Council's approach to humanity. They are not conquerors, but they are dangerous in ways we have never encountered. They assume friendship where others assume neutrality. They plan for success where others prepare for failure. They treat the galaxy as a place to build rather than a place to merely exist. The emergency session ended without resolution, but with one clear conclusion. Humanity was unlike any species the Council had ever encountered, and traditional diplomatic approaches might not be adequate for dealing with them. Ambassador Wells, meanwhile, spent her evening in the station's recreation area, buying drinks for anyone who wanted to chat about trade possibilities and cultural exchange. She had no idea that her friendly networking was being analyzed by intelligence services as a potential form of economic warfare. The galaxy was about to learn that humans treated diplomacy the same way they treated everything else, as a problem, to be solved through direct action, honest communication. Captain Sam Parker was drinking his second cup of coffee when the distress signal reached the U.S. Nevada. The message was weak and broken, coming from somewhere in the outer rim, where space was mostly empty and help was usually days away. Captain, we're picking up an emergency broadcast, reported Communications Officer Jenny Martinez. Sounds like a civilian transport under attack. Parker set down his coffee mug and walked to the bridge. On the main screen, he could see the aftermath of violence. A large passenger ship drifted in space, its hull torn open in several places. Smaller vessels that looked like escape pods were scattered around it like seeds blown by the wind. Any sign of the attackers? Parker asked. Negative, sir. Looks like they hit fast and left. Classic pirate raid, answered Lieutenant Bobby Chun from the tactical station. The ship is the Peaceful Journey, a Zephyrian colony transport. Manifest shows 800 passengers, mostly families moving to a new settlement. Parker studied. The wreckage. How many escaped pods? 43 pods launched. That means maybe 300 survivors. The pirates took the rest. The words hit Parker like a punch to the stomach. Pirates had been a problem in this part of space for over 200 years, but humans had only learned about them 3 weeks ago. The Galactic Council's peacekeeping force had been fighting the Kareth Syndicate for decades with limited success, constrained by legal procedures and jurisdictional disputes. Get us over there, Parker ordered. All hands to rescue stations. Nevada reached the survivors within 20 minutes. Parker's crew worked with efficient precision, bringing escape pods aboard and providing medical care to injured passengers. Many of the Zephyrians were hurt, but all of them were grateful to be alive. Colony Governor Vel Run was among the survivors. He was an older Zephyrian with silver skin and tired eyes who had been leading his people to a new world when the pirates struck. Captain Parker, Vel Run said as medical teams treated his wounded shoulder. I must thank you for responding so quickly. The peacekeeping force said they would send help, but their nearest ship is 4 days away. Parker nodded. What happened here? The Kareth Syndicate. They attack civilian ships, steal cargo, and take prisoners to sell as slaves. This was their 3rd raid this month in this sector. Where did they take the prisoners? Vel Run looked surprised by the question. To their hidden bases, I suppose. No one knows exactly where. The Syndicate has been operating for 2 centuries. Their leader, Warlord Xanath, commands over 10,000 pirates across 40 systems. Parker was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then he asked a question that would change everything. Governor, where exactly did they take your people? Captain, I appreciate your concern, But the peacekeeping force will handle this through proper channels. They will file reports, conduct investigations, and perhaps organize a rescue mission in several months. Parker looked at the governor like he had just suggested they abandon the prisoners. Several months? These things take time. Legal procedures must be followed. Jurisdictional issues must be resolved, and proper authorizations must be obtained. Parker nodded thoughtfully. Well, that's nice for them. We'll have your people back by Tuesday. The governor stared at him. Captain, you do not understand. The Kareth Syndicate is not some small criminal group. They have warships, hidden bases, and centuries of experience. The Galactic Council has been fighting them for decades without success. Governor, Parker said with a smile that wasn't entirely friendly, you haven't seen how Americans handle pirates. Within 18 hours, Parker had been joined by 2 other human ships. The USS Colorado, a heavy cruiser commanded by Captain Maria Santos, and the USS Montana, a fast attack vessel under Captain Danny Cooper. The 3 ships formed what they called Task Force Get Stuff Done. The human approach to the pirate problem was refreshingly simple. Instead of trying to locate every hidden base and eliminate the entire syndicate through careful strategic planning, they decided to make piracy unprofitable by responding to every raid immediately and with overwhelming force. The first test came when Kareth raiders hit a mining station in the Belter system. The pirates expected their usual routine: strike fast, take what they could carry, and disappear before any meaningful response could be organized. Instead, they found 3 human warships waiting for them. The pirates had used a hyperspace route that should have been impossible to calculate quickly enough for an intercept. They had attacked at a time when no patrol ships were scheduled to be in the area. They had followed all their standard procedures for a quick, safe raid. None of that mattered because the humans had thrown out the standard playbook entirely. Captain Santos had positioned her ships using what she called educated guesses in aggressive positioning. Instead of following patrol routes, the human ships had stationed themselves at points where pirates were most likely to strike. Instead of waiting for distress calls, they had moved to intercept based on intelligence gathered from rescued prisoners. The battle lasted 8 minutes. The human ships fought with tactics that no military academy taught, using coordination that seemed almost telepathic and a level of aggressive precision that turned the raid into a rout. The pirates found themselves outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely unprepared for an enemy that attacked them instead of defending fixed positions. When the shooting stopped, every pirate ship was either destroyed or captured. The stolen cargo was recovered intact, and the entire operation was broadcast live to every system in the sector. Captain Santos' after-action report was typically human in its understated efficiency. Pirates showed up. We stopped them. No casualties on our side. Recovered all stolen property and took 12 prisoners for intelligence purposes. Next Tuesday works for us if they want to try again. The message spread through pirate networks faster than news of a gold strike. The Kareth Syndicate, which had built its reputation on the certainty that raids would face only token resistance, suddenly found themselves dealing with humans who seemed to take pirate attacks personally. Warlord Xanath received the reports from his flagship, a massive vessel called the Iron Fang that served as the mobile capital of his empire. For 200 years, he had built his power on the simple fact that his raids were faster than any response. Now, humans were somehow responding before his ships even arrived. How did they know where we would strike? He demanded of his intelligence. Chief, a scarred veteran named Karthok. Unknown, Warlord. Their ships were positioned perfectly to intercept our raiders, but there was no way they could have calculated our approach vector in time. Then they have spies in our organization. Impossible. We have verified the loyalty of all personnel involved in planning these raids. Xanith studied the tactical reports. The human ships fought unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. They used unpredictable attack patterns, seen to coordinate without visible communication, and showed a level of aggressive creativity that suggested extensive combat experience. What do we know about these humans? Very little. They are new to galactic civilization, but their technology appears highly advanced. Their ships are fast, well-armed, and commanded by officers who do not follow standard tactical procedures. The warlord made a decision that he would later regret. If these humans want to play games with the Syndicate, we will show them the price of interfering with our operations. Prepare the Death's Head Squadron for a major strike. Let us see how they handle a real battle. The Death's Head Squadron was Xanith's elite force, 12 of his best ships commanded by his most experienced captains. They had never lost a battle, never failed to complete a mission, and never encountered an enemy they could not overwhelm through superior numbers. And firepower. They attacked a human supply convoy 3 days later and discovered that their reputation meant nothing to people who had never heard of them. Captain Amy Foster of the UES Wyoming was escorting what appeared to be 3 unarmed cargo ships when the pirates struck. The Death's Head Squadron expected to find frightened merchants begging for mercy. Instead, they found a trap. The cargo ships were actually disguised warships, and Foster had 3 more vessels waiting in nearby asteroid fields. The entire convoy was bait designed to lure pirates into a battle they could not win. The engagement lasted 15 minutes. When it was over, Warlord Xanith had lost his elite squadron and faced the unthinkable reality that his 200-year reign of terror was ending. The Syndicate tried changing their tactics, but humanity adapted faster. Stealth raids were detected by human ships that somehow knew they were coming. Attacks on remote targets found human patrols that had no business being in those sectors. Attempts to negotiate were answered with polite but firm demands for the immediate return of all slaves and stolen property. Within 6 months, pirate activity in human-patrolled sectors had dropped by 80%. The few remaining pirates either fled to distant parts of the galaxy or took Captain Parker's advice to find more productive hobbies. Warlord Xanith himself was captured during what would be his final raid, a desperate assault on what he thought was an undefended human supply depot. Trade Coordinator Helen Martinez arrived at Commerce Station, Nexus, with what she described as a few samples of what Earth has to offer. Her cargo hold contained coffee, chocolate, computers, tools, vehicles, weapons, and what she cheerfully called some odds and ends we thought might be interesting. Within her first week, she accidentally crashed 3 different commodity markets and started what economic historians would later call the Great Galactic Price Adjustment. Martinez had been chosen for her experience in international trade negotiations and her ability to make friends with difficult customers. Her superiors on Earth thought these skills would help her establish trade relationships with alien civilizations. They had no idea that Martinez was about to discover humanity had been accidentally building an economy capable of supplying half the galaxy. The traders' assembly met in a massive circular chamber where representatives from hundreds of different species bought and sold everything from raw materials to exotic technologies. Martinez walked into her first meeting carrying a briefcase, wearing a business suit, and feeling like she was about to give a sales presentation at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. "Honored traders," she began, setting up her laptop computer. "I'm Helen Martinez from Earth, and I'm here to talk about some products my planet might be able to offer." The assembled merchants looked at her with expressions ranging from polite interest to barely concealed boredom. New species typically offered small quantities of unique local products in exchange for basic galactic technologies. Martinez opened with coffee. "This is a recreational beverage we call coffee," she explained, pouring steaming cups from a thermos and passing them around. It contains a mild stimulant and has a pleasant flavor. We thought you might enjoy trying it." The reaction was immediate. The Zephyrian delegate, whose people had built their entire export economy around stimulant beverages, took one sip and nearly dropped his cup. The Crystalline Assembly's representative actually started glowing brighter. Even the normally stoic Hive Collective observer made appreciative humming sounds. "This is extraordinary," said Trade Master Krell-Vok of the Merchant Guild. "The flavor profile is complex, the stimulant effect is perfectly balanced, and the aroma is remarkable. How much of this beverage can your world produce?" Martinez shrugged. "About 20 million tons annually, and that's without really trying. Brazil alone could probably supply half the galaxy if there's demand. We've got plantations on 6 continents, and we're always looking for new markets." The silence that followed was so complete that Martinez could hear the station's environmental systems humming. Trade Master Krell-Vok was staring at her like she had just claimed to own the galaxy. "Did you say 20 million tons annually?" "Give or take. That's current production. If you folks are interested, we could scale up pretty easily. Americans especially like big projects, and coffee is one of our major exports." The Zephyrian delegate was frantically calculating numbers on his portable computer. His people's entire annual stimulant beverage production was roughly 50,000 tons, and it formed the backbone of their interstellar trade relationships. Martinez continued her presentation, apparently oblivious to the growing panic among the assembled traders. She moved on to chocolate, which caused the sugar commodity market to destabilize within minutes. Then she demonstrated Earth electronics. "These are basic consumer computers," she explained, setting up a laptop that was more powerful than most ship navigation systems. Every human family owns at least one, usually several. They're built for durability because Earth environments can be pretty harsh. She showed them smartphones, tablets, and what she called standard household appliances. Each device was engineered to survive conditions that would destroy most galactic consumer electronics. They were also mass-produced in quantities that dwarfed the manufacturing capacity of most member worlds. "We weren't sure what you folks might need," Martinez continued, "so we brought a little bit of everything. Basic stuff, you know. Computers, vehicles, construction equipment, medical supplies, entertainment systems, and some specialty items we thought might be interesting." The basic stuff included manufacturing equipment that could outproduce entire planetary industrial systems, medical technology that surpassed anything available outside the core worlds, and construction tools designed to build cities in Earth's extreme environments. Things got significantly worse when Lieutenant Colonel Roger Hayes arrived for the weapons demonstration. Hayes was the military liaison assigned to Martinez's trade mission, a quiet professional who carried himself like someone accustomed to dangerous situations. He had brought along what he described as standard infantry equipment for comparison purposes. "This is basic gear that every human soldier carries," Hayes explained, setting up his demonstration in the station's testing bay. "Personal protection equipment, small arms, and support systems." He activated his armor, and the station's sensors immediately registered energy signatures that should have belonged to a small spacecraft. The personal shield generator he wore as routine equipment created defensive fields stronger than most ship-class systems. The handheld plasma rifle he demonstrated was more powerful than the weapons mounted on many patrol vessels. The portable communication system he used for coordination had longer range and better encryption than most military command networks. "This is just basic gear," Hayes explained to increasingly alarmed assembly members. "Every human soldier carries this as standard equipment. We've got heavier stuff back home, but we didn't want to show off on our first visit." Trade Master Krell-Vok was no longer trying to hide his shock. "Colonel Hayes, what you describe as basic infantry equipment appears to exceed the capabilities of most planetary defense systems. Hayes looked genuinely surprised. Really? This is just personal protection gear. Our actual military hardware is a lot more impressive. The implications were staggering. Humanity was offering superior products at prices that seemed impossibly low, backed by industrial capacity that could supply significant portions of galactic demand. And they seemed completely unaware that they were essentially volunteering to become the galaxy's primary manufacturer and defense contractor. Martinez spent the afternoon discussing trade possibilities with increasingly nervous merchant representatives. Earth's agricultural output could feed entire star systems. Their manufacturing capacity could supply consumer goods to hundreds of worlds. Their entertainment industry produced more content annually than most civilizations created in decades. The thing is, Martinez explained over dinner in the station's restaurant, Earth has always been pretty competitive. We've got 8 billion people, and we've spent centuries figuring out how to make things efficiently. When you're feeding and housing that many folks on one planet, you get good at production. She was buying drinks for anyone who wanted to chat about trade possibilities and handing out business cards for Earth's major corporations. To the assembled traders, it looked like the most sophisticated economic warfare campaign in galactic history. To Martinez, it was just good networking. The evening news broadcasts across 17 different trade networks led with stories about the human economic invasion. Financial analysts were calculating the potential impact of human integration on existing market structures. Several commodity prices had already begun fluctuating based on speculation about Earth's production capacity. The Ethereal Dominion's economic advisors released a report stating that human entry into galactic markets could potentially destabilize existing trade relationships across 40 systems. The Stellar Republic's intelligence service began analyzing whether humanity's economic power represented a threat to galactic stability. The Zephyrian government called an emergency session to discuss what they termed the coffee crisis. Their entire export economy was based on stimulant beverages that humans could produce better, cheaper, and in vastly larger quantities. Martinez, meanwhile, was having the time of her life. She had made friends with traders from dozens of different species, learned about markets she had never imagined, and discovered that Earth products were in huge demand across the galaxy. This is going to be great for business back home, she told Hayes as they reviewed the day's meetings. I've already got preliminary orders for 10 million tons of coffee, 5 million computers, and enough construction equipment to build cities on 12 different worlds. Hayes was reading intelligence reports about market disruptions and economic panic spreading across multiple star systems. Helen, I think we might have caused some problems. What kind of problems? The kind where entire planetary economies are based on products we can make better and cheaper than they can. Martinez considered this. Well, that's what competition is all about, right? Back home, we call it the free market. Everyone benefits when the best products win. The next morning brought delegations from 6 different trade coalitions, all wanting to negotiate exclusive deals for Earth products. The Merchant Guild offered humanity immediate membership in the Galactic Trade Alliance. 3 different species requested technology sharing agreements for manufacturing processes. Martinez handled it all with the cheerful efficiency of someone who had spent years negotiating international trade deals. Emperor Thakmer of the Velthran Empire watched the human expansion with growing alarm from his massive flagship, the Endless Fury. Unlike the Galactic Council races, who saw humanity as potentially dangerous but probably manageable, Thakmer saw humans as a direct threat to everything he had built. The Velthran Empire controlled 37 star systems through military might and careful intimidation. For 3 centuries, they had expanded their territory by conquering weaker species. and forcing them into tributary relationships. The Galactic Council tolerated them because they stayed within their recognized borders and followed the basic rules of interstellar law. Humanity threatened to change everything. They make friends too easily, Thakmer told his military advisor, General Rockter, as they reviewed intelligence reports. They offer help without asking for payment. They solve problems without demanding territory. This makes them dangerous to our way of life. The Emperor was not wrong. Human behavior was fundamentally incompatible with the Velthron approach to galactic politics. Where the Empire used fear and force to maintain control, humans used cooperation and mutual benefit. Where the Empire hoarded resources and technology, humans shared freely and built partnerships. The other species will start expecting us to behave like humans, General Rocktar observed. They will want cooperation instead of tribute, friendship instead of submission. Thakmer made a decision that would define Velthran human relations for generations. We will test their resolve. Attack one of their colonies, gauge their response, and then decide whether to negotiate or eliminate them entirely. The target they chose was New Austin, a farming colony of 12,000 humans in the Kepler 442 system. It was far from Earth, lightly defended, and seemed like an easy target for the kind of demonstration the Empire had in mind. The attack began at 3 a.m, local time, with a standard orbital bombardment designed to cripple infrastructure without completely destroying the colony. The Velthrans expected the humans to respond with either desperate pleas for negotiation or a formal declaration of war following proper diplomatic channels. They got neither. Governor Lisa Bennett of New Austin was a former military engineer who had retired to farming after 20 years in the Earth Defense Force. She woke up to explosions and immediately activated the colony's emergency protocols. All hands, this is the governor, she broadcast on every communication channel. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Implement Defense Plan Charlie. All civilians to secure positions. All volunteers to assigned stations. New Austin had been built with Earth's typical attention to potential problems. The colony included underground shelters, distributed power systems, and manufacturing facilities that could be quickly converted for military production. More importantly, it had been settled by the kind of people who had chosen to build anew. Life on a distant world. Within 6 hours, New Austin's population had transformed from farmers and colonists into an organized resistance force. The colony's workshops, designed for agricultural equipment, were retooled to produce weapons and ammunition. The orbital defense platforms, intended to deflect asteroids and space debris, were reconfigured as anti-ship weapons. Captain Tony Rodriguez, a retired Marine who ran the colony's vehicle maintenance shop, found himself commanding the defense force. He had served in 3 different conflicts and knew how to organize civilians for combat. Listen up, folks, he broadcast to the colony. These people picked the wrong place to start trouble. We came here to farm in peace, but every one of us knows how to fight. They can leave now, or we can discuss this the hard way. The Velthrans chose the hard way and immediately regretted it. New Austin's defense was unlike anything in Imperial military experience. The colonists used farming equipment as weapons, irrigation systems as improvised traps, and their intimate knowledge of local terrain to turn every settlement into a fortress. When Imperial ground troops landed expecting to face frightened civilians, they encountered organized resistance from people who treated the invasion as a personal insult. The humans fought with creativity, determination, and the kind of stubborn refusal to surrender that had characterized their species throughout history. The colonists improvised explosives from fertilizer, converted tractors into armored vehicles, and used communication networks designed for coordinating harvests to coordinate ambushes. Every farmer was a potential soldier, Every barn was a potential bunker, and every field was a potential battlefield. Emperor Thakmer watched the battle reports with growing disbelief. His professional military forces were being held off by farmers, who had turned agricultural tools into weapons of war. "How many troops have we lost?" he demanded. 1,400 dead, 3,000 wounded, General Rakhtar reported grimly. "The humans are using tactics that our training does not cover. They fight like every piece of ground is worth dying for." "They are defending their homes," Thakmer observed. "But they are only farmers. Farmers with military training, advanced technology, and a complete disregard for conventional tactics," the general corrected. "They have turned their entire colony into a weapon." On the fourth day of fighting, Earth Fleet Command arrived. Admiral Nancy Foster brought 12 ships and a reputation for getting things done efficiently. Her fleet included the heavy cruiser U.S. Texas, the battleship UES Arizona, and 10 support vessels crewed by people who had been following the New Austin situation with growing anger. Admiral Foster opened communications with the Imperial Fleet surrounding New Austin. Her message was clear, direct, and delivered with the kind of calm certainty that suggested she had dealt with similar problems before. "Imperial Fleet, this is Admiral Nancy Foster of the Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of Colonial Protection Treaty 7 and have committed acts of war against Earth citizens. You have 10 minutes to withdraw from this system, or we will consider your continued presence a declaration of hostile intent. Choose wisely." Emperor Thakmer was monitoring the situation from his flagship. He had expected humans to negotiate, to offer concessions, to behave like every other species the Empire had intimidated over the centuries. Instead, he found himself facing an ultimatum delivered with the confidence of someone who expected to be obeyed. The Emperor made the decision that would define his legacy. He chose to fight. The Battle of New Austin lasted 18 minutes. Human fleet tactics combined methodical precision with creative aggression in ways that Imperial doctrine had never anticipated. The Earth ships fought as a coordinated unit, covering each other's weaknesses and exploiting every advantage with ruthless efficiency. The Imperial fleet had superior numbers, but found themselves outmaneuvered, outgunned, and completely unprepared for an enemy that seemed to have been planning for exactly this kind of battle. Human ships used tactics that emphasized speed, coordination, and the kind of aggressive precision that turned space combat into systematic demolition. When the shooting stopped, half the Imperial fleet was destroyed, and the other half was surrendering. Emperor Thakmer found his flagship surrounded by Earth vessels and facing the choice between capture and death. Admiral Foster's next move was quintessentially human. She accepted the surrender of surviving Imperial ships, provided medical aid to enemy wounded, and then invited Emperor Thakmer aboard the UES Texas for what she called a frank discussion about galactic neighborliness. The conversation between Foster and Thakmer was recorded and later became required study at military academies throughout the galaxy. Foster's approach was direct, practical, and surprisingly effective. "You tested us," she told the Emperor as they sat in her ready room drinking coffee. "And now you know. We don't want to conquer anybody. We don't want to rule the galaxy. And we definitely don't want to fight wars if we can avoid them." Thakmer studied the human admiral. She was smaller than most Velthran females, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. "Then why do you fight so effectively?" "Because if you attack our people, we will stop you. If you threaten our friends, we will stop you. And if you make the mistake of thinking we're too soft or too civilized to do what needs doing, we will prove you wrong in ways you won't enjoy." The Emperor had built his empire on the principle that superior force could impose superior will. He had never encountered an enemy that combined obvious military capability with apparent reluctance to use it for conquest. "What do you want from the Velthrin Empire?" he asked. Foster smiled. "We want you to stop attacking people. We want you to establish normal diplomatic relations with your neighbors. And we want you to understand that the galaxy is big enough for everyone to find their own way to prosperity." The Treaty of New Austin was signed 6 weeks later in the rebuilt colony meeting hall. The Velthrin Empire agreed to recognize human territorial claims, establish formal diplomatic relations, and pay reparations for the attack on the colony. In exchange, humanity offered trade agreements, technology sharing, and what Admiral Foster called a chance to start over as neighbors instead of enemies. The signing ceremony was attended by representatives from the Galactic Council,